Hello and welcome to this unit on recycling. Unless you have been living on a remote planet somewhere for the last 10 years or so, and believe me, there are many people that have been, you will know something about recycling. Local councils all over Italy have stolen our parking spaces as they have introduced more and more huge containers for recycling glass, paper and plastics, and sometimes even for rotten food or organic waste as they like to call it. They have become part of the urban landscape and, in some places, artists have converted these large, normally grey and boring, blank canvases into colourful works of art. Most governments in the Western world have been encouraging us to recycle for a long time, so we have known for many years that we can recycle, but the question is, do we actually do it? The honest and worrying answer to this question lies somewhere between no and sometimes, with a few exceptions from the truly committed recycler. Before we examine this in more detail, maybe we should remind ourselves why we need to recycle. In just a few words, the bigger picture is that we need to recycle in order to save our planet. Maybe it sounds a bit melodramatic, but scientists tell us that if we continue using all our natural resources, creating pollution and producing rubbish at the same rate as we have been doing for the last 30 or 40 years or so, we will soon destroy our planet, and then what will we do? Sometimes it's hard to make the connection between recycling and saving the planet, but let's think about it. Take the simple example of paper. If we don't recycle our newspapers and cardboard packaging, etc., then the next time we want to produce them, we will have to start the production from the beginning, and that means cutting down more trees. Trees have played a very important role in our planet's ecosystem since the beginning of time. They are one of the most important living things on our planet as they absorb CO2 gases, which are one of the main causes of global warming. In developing nations, the situation is far more serious. As these nations develop, demand increases and more resources are needed. There are far less controls and restrictions on things like forest management, and the problems of deforestation is dangerously common. To make matters worse, some of the forests that have been destroyed are some of the most important in the world. I am talking about the rainforests like the ones in Indonesia and Brazil. These rainforests are the lungs of our planet, which help it to breathe and clean the air. Apart from this, they also are home to thousands of endangered animals and species, including many that we haven't even discovered yet, and maybe they could be the key to finding the cure to very human problems of cancer and other serious illnesses. How many reasons do we need in order to protect them? Okay, to summarize, if you don't recycle your newspapers, you are destroying the rainforest and destroying the planet. Obviously, it's not such a direct relationship, but it is a problem that has been getting bigger and bigger, so maybe we should start telling people to think this way to eliminate one of the most serious problems of all, apathy. When you ask people to recycle, one of the common responses is, "What's the point?" Normally at this point in the conversation, people start talking about China or India. These two countries have been developing incredibly quickly over the last 10 or 20 years and have a combined population of about 2 billion, which is huge. 2 billion people have a massive influence on the planet, so, to be honest, recycling a couple of newspapers actually seems quite insignificant. So really, what is the point? Well, there are a number of things to consider. Firstly, it depends on your mentality. For example, if you went to the local swimming pool and saw a man having a pee in the water, would you copy him? Hopefully not, because otherwise we would all be swimming in yellow water, which is a pretty disgusting idea. If one person sets a good example, it's much more likely that others will follow this example, until the bad thing becomes unacceptable to society. And that is what must happen with recycling. So, disgusting metaphors apart, recycling and respecting the environment is serious business, so we need to help each other remember that our actions are not just a drop in the ocean, and take action together. We can make a real difference. The second thing to consider is that countries like China are late starters, which means they are far more flexible than developed Western nations. They can look at us and see the problems that we have that are not only dangerous for the environment, but expensive too. Once again, it's like setting a good example, but on a much bigger scale. We all know that certain nations, like India and China, for example, have been copying Western ideas and technology for years, so it shouldn't be too difficult. Thinking about this from another point of view, one of the most important things to consider is what happens to the stuff that we don't recycle. Where does it all go? When the rubbish is collected, if you're lucky, from the streets and the big containers, what happens to it? Well, depending on where you live, there are a couple of options. One of the options is to take the rubbish to a landfill site. A landfill site is the place where the rubbish is taken and buried underground. Landfill sites are often old quarries, the place where stones and rocks for construction are extracted. But, obviously, there is a limit as to how much rubbish they can take, and, as we have seen in several recent examples, the rubbish in the landfill can often be toxic, so it's dangerous for the local environment and the people that live nearby. A further part of the problem, and remember recycling is just one piece of the giant environmental puzzle, is that we are producing and consuming more and more stuff. Apart from the obvious stuff like newspapers and magazines, etc., many products have increasingly become disposable. Things like clothes, electronic goods, and even furniture have much shorter lifespans, and, as we have already said, demand for these products has been constantly increasing over the last few decades as the developing nations, develop. Finally, another part of the problem is packaging. How many times have you bought something that seemed to have twice as much packaging as necessary? Supermarkets are particularly bad at this, as things like fruit and vegetables are pre-packed with plastic that is completely useless as soon as you get home, and it's probably destined for the landfill, or even worse, the incinerators. At the end of the day, we've got a lot of work to do, but the good news is, things are improving, especially as people like you are setting a good example and telling the old guys what to do. Well, thanks for saving our planet, and until next time, ciao for now.